Have you ever looked back at an old belief and thought, wow, I really used to think that? Perhaps it was a terrible haircut choice or a regrettable political leaning that's a bit awkward now. Perhaps you were completely obsessed with someone who you now know is undoubtedly an idiot. Well, the even more awkward truth is we're probably making similar giant errors of judgment right now, just in ways that you haven't noticed yet. Yes, we all carry silent assumptions, biases that feel like common sense, and opinions that we mistake for truth. But what if the real reason you're stuck, maybe uninspired or in conflict, isn't the world? Perhaps it's you. Welcome to the Growth Mindset Psychology podcast, where we examine the science of self-improvement, and in this case, we're dismantling the invisible beliefs that hold us back and explore how to live with more awareness, adaptability, and intention. I am your host, Sam Webster Harris, psychology nerd, storyteller, and someone endlessly fascinated by the ways we lie to ourselves. In today's episode, I'll be asking a deceptively simple question. Why is it so hard to see our blind spots? And I'll attack this question in two parts. Firstly, the concepts of prejudice and these slippery opinions that weave their way into our thinking without us realizing we're forming them. And in the second half, I'll talk about the concept of ego and how we lie to ourselves about being special and how we generally just fail to see the reality of our own situation. You'll hear some surprising stories about the history of seatbelts to failures of war and perplexing reactions to plagues. All ideas I'm presenting will be backed up with some science and a few uncomfortable truths that might just change the way you see yourself and everyone else. All coming up after a short break. Prejudice happens by quickly deciding what you think without questioning your thoughts. We intuitively conclude that we understand everything that we need to know about a subject, a thing, or a person, and decide that it is bad, and then we shut ourselves off from new sources. It's the perfect example of a fixed mindset, hence a brilliant thing to discuss here on the Growth Mindset podcast. So, starting at the start, why is prejudice so hard to notice? Well, we think that our opinions are part of our inherent tastes, our interests, and our moral values. It feels like they're just part of our genetics, they're part of us. Well, the opposite is true. Our tastes, our interests, our moral values are completely constructed due to our opinions. And those opinions that we have are often not our own opinions. Our opinions are things that are given to us by society and by our ego. These opinions help guide us to satisfy an underlying need that we have to feel appreciated and accepted by a community that we value. Whether a specific type of music or fashion or food appeals to you might not be something you were actually born with to like, but will be a part of how you grew up. The things that you like come with an expectation of the things that you will dislike. Judging what you think of something without being open to new information stifles the ability to ever see the absolute truth. But the problem here is that we think we're already seeing the truth. The knowledge that we have that works today feels as reliable as the fact that gravity today will be as strong tomorrow. It's impossible to not think what you're thinking because then you wouldn't be thinking it. You can't ever see when you're wrong because if you did, you wouldn't think that you were being wrong. Like you can't ever see when you're being stupid or when you're being wrong because you don't think you're doing something stupid or wrong at the moment that you're doing it. So let's go a bit more into how prejudice happens. In 1955, 37,000 Americans died in car accidents. That's 6 times more people than die today, adjusted for the amount of miles driven each year. And in 1955, this was the year that Ford offered seatbelts as an upgrade in all their car models. It was $27, which is about $200 in today's value. Now, seatbelts had been proven to increase survival rates by 70%. Yet, despite this fact, only 2% of people buying cars chose to upgrade to have seatbelts. That means that 98% of people buying a car chose to risk their lives, they chose to risk the lives of their children, and they chose to risk the lives of their partners, despite the data in front of them. Amazingly, by 1980, only 15% of cars had seatbelts. And it was in December 1984 when New York became the first state to require seatbelts to be worn. Despite this progress, it still took until early 2000s for more than 80% of the cars on the road to have a seatbelt. And in fact, New Hampshire is now the only state in America that does not have a law requiring you to wear a seatbelt. And now what this shows is that social norms prevent change. As Morgan Housel states, the author of Psychology of Money, the strongest urge in the world is to keep doing things as you've always done them. And what's insane about this story is that the urge to do things as you've always done them is stronger than the urge to survive. People just hate being told that they've been doing things wrong all along. And one of the other things that blocks change and keeps us blind to our prejudice is that we have no idea what life could be like if it was different. As I spend more time working with the growth mindset and talking with people going through change, one of the most major barriers to change is the fact that we lack awareness of what change would be like. There's nothing in our working knowledge to represent the potential new feeling that we might be seeking. As humans, we perceive risks and problems of a change much more than we do the ambiguous unknown benefits. So take, for example, health. You can't understand whether you like exercising or not without first being healthy enough to do it well. If you try to run for 15 minutes and it feels like you're going to die and you're just wheezing and like everything is awful, you don't know how good it might feel to be fit. Explaining what it's like to someone to run for over an hour and feel full of energy whilst driven by like a delightful runner's high with some good music and some stunning views, it's kind of like trying to explain the color red to a blind person. Yet, if you're trying to start running, it's so easy to imagine the problems like blisters, expensive trainers, getting a stitch, having painful legs, losing time from your day, looking really red and sweaty and pathetic. And those are all negative things that you can feel very concretely and you know what they're like. You don't know what it's like to feel great because you have no idea what that type of great thing feels like. Now, this does mean that it's impossible for someone to say that all sports are not for them without trying all sports. What's interesting here is that it's impossible for someone to say that all sports just aren't for them without having tried all sports, because baseball is different to ballet and jiu-jitsu is different to juggling. Now, it isn't easy to become fit and it isn't easy to try the thousands of potential sports available, but without trying it, any negative idea that you have about exercise is just an unquestioned prejudice. Another blinding bias we can have is in communication. As babies, we learn to cry to get attention. We have no words to describe our emotions. As children, we still cry to get attention, but we'll also learn that maybe we can get angry when things don't get our way, and that's something we can do to exert power. Finally, as adults, we think that we've grown up because we stop crying for attention. Yet, if we deal with some of our problems by getting angry, we haven't learned to explain our feelings or the current injustice in a way that solves it. Instead, by getting angry, you're still letting your emotions control you to try and get attention and use your tantrums to exert power. You simply haven't improved your ability to argue and attract respect in a situation. Now, if you can draw people towards you to willingly listen to you and agree with your ideas in the moments when you're stressed, it's a wonderful, sustainable form of power. And most people have no working knowledge of what that feels like. Often people think that their ability to act out of anger is just of moral importance to them. It's really natural to resist the idea of not being angry. But that's just another prejudiced opinion that people haven't questioned. It's just something intuitive to do because you've always done it. And you deny yourself the idea that perhaps getting angry is the wrong option in many of the scenarios. Now, change is not always easy and it's not always obvious, but if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting the same results. And using anger to exert power is a very unsustainable form of getting what you want. Whereas getting people to understand your own feelings and believe what you're thinking and respect you is a much harder but much more sustainable form of power and would really improve people's mental health. Okay, and now onto another bias that comes up with where people live. Many Americans have never left their country yet believe it is the best country in the world. But how can they ever know? As a non-American myself, it's easy for me to notice some of the flaws: the massive inequality, the expensive education, the more expensive healthcare, the awful public transport, raging gun violence, and a nation that's just so politically divided that basically half the people you meet will hate you based on your interests. But one of the problems for Americans is that in many metrics, it is undeniably the best country in the world. It has the biggest entertainment and tech industries, the largest economy, it has every form of nature you could imagine. And this does perhaps make the idea that America is the best country in the world in general just so much more believable without questioning it. Ultimately, whatever country you're in, you need to leave your country to understand how good or bad it is. There's no real ability to get perspective from within your own bubble. Now, I certainly don't believe that England is the best country in the world. In fact, I used to hate England. I could only list its problems. I've now lived in 6 different countries and see both the appeal and the problems within the UK and England. And for anyone, it's just very dangerous to quickly make strong conclusions about big life decisions and where to live, what is a good career, how much money you might need, and just the other things that you need in life really require some perspective before you can actually judge them. Imagine if you had to marry the first partner that you slightly fancied without really having a chance to date different people, without the chance to learn what to expect from a good partner through experiences. How many people would be stuck in toxic relationships that aren't for them? Yet we accept our career, we accept our country, we accept our lifestyle without realizing how toxic our current situation might be for us. This is due to the fact that we rely on initial opinions and prejudice that get formed about our lifestyle, our health, our career, our hometown, and our hobbies, and that even influences the way that we experience emotions. So what I think is really interesting here is the concept of good taste and how to develop good taste, because perhaps one of the most important drivers of success is essentially good taste. Who you spend time with, what you spend time doing, are driven by taste. And if you have good taste, you will make good decisions in life. Yet most people don't work on improving their taste for 2 reasons. Ego, everyone thinks they already have good taste, and fixed mindset. They think that their tastes and their interests are something they are born with. And so if we look into ego, we don't question our tastes because we think that they are the best. As mentioned earlier, we often haven't even found experiences for which to grade our taste against. We haven't tried all the different sports. We haven't lived in different countries. So the idea that we are currently deluded and don't know anything about taste just doesn't sit well with our ego. Our ego needs to believe that we are the wise master of our life who made sensible decisions for sensible reasons. And this blinds us to the fact that actually we really don't know that much. And then the second issue of having a fixed mindset is that we think that our taste is mostly like a fixed thing. It's just our preferences. It's what we like and it's what we don't like. Whilst we think that our opinions could, of course, be changeable. Yet we really fail to change our opinions on things like our taste because we think we can't change our taste. Whereas when you look at the reality of taste and opinions, your taste is actually much more flexible than you realize. And it's your opinions that are things that you really have to work hard on and you don't change as much as you think you do. Rick Rubin is one of the most successful music producers of all time, working with artists such as Eminem, Lady Gaga, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, The Strokes, Adele, Johnny Cash, to name a few, Slayer. Anyway, he doesn't claim to have any special abilities with music or technology and says that his main talent is just respecting his taste. He says that I never decide if an idea is good or bad until I've tried it. So much of what gets in the way of things being good is thinking that we already know what is good. So the more that we can remove any baggage that we're carrying with us and just be in the moment, use our ears, pay attention to what's happening, and just listen to the inner voice that directs us, the better. Now, Rick Rubin is a legend, so you should probably listen to his advice. And then when thinking about fixed mindset and how getting into a growth mindset, the conversation leads into talent versus skill. The growth mindset reminds us, of course, that our inherent talent does not represent our potential skills. An initial talent that we have might be a determination of how much skill you could acquire or how quickly you might acquire it. However, ultimately, how much skill you have is related to the work that you do. Michael Jordan was dropped from his youth basketball team because his talent wasn't good enough. He went on to become one of the most skilled players in the world and perhaps one of the best athletes of all time due to his hard work and dedication and practice. And at the end of it, he was celebrated for his incredible gift and talent, the same gift and talent that got him dropped from his basketball team because he wasn't good enough. So this reminds us that we can really change our story and that our talent and our tastes are very flexible things that we can bend through work and dedication. And ultimately, we should be thinking about how we can pursue good taste. If we fall into fixed mindset beliefs, we keep our fixed opinions and our fixed tastes. If we fall into fixed mindset beliefs, we keep our fixed opinions and our fixed tastes. But just like our skills that can be improved through hard work, we can improve our opinions through the act of novel experiences. Again, leaning into some of Rick Rubin's work, he says that to vary your inspiration, consider varying your inputs. turn the sound off to watch a film, listen to the same song on repeat, read only the first word of each sentence in a short story, arrange stones by size or color, learn to lucid dream, break habits, look for differences, and notice connections. He is just a crazy individual who's just made it his life's work to break down the prejudices in his head or the concept of how something should be, and that allows him to see opportunities to do things that others have not done. And when you think about the fact that your life is so short, it makes sense to try and understand as much as possible and to see the many different ways that you can see the world, so that way you can make an informed decision on how to live. And when we can finally stop thinking that we know everything and stop having quite so much prejudice to the way everything should be or the way our lives should be, only then can we start to build at least some awareness of the reality of the world and stop being so lost in our own opinions. Okay, so that's the first section down on prejudice, and we'll be back after a short break to discuss ego and how we lie to ourselves about being special, with a few crazy stories that really changed how I think and hopefully will for you too. Catch you after the break. In the fallacy of our youth, death seems a distant thing that could never really affect us. We do know that we are just another mortal being, and yet it somehow just doesn't truly sink in. Every moment of our experience up until now is, of course, of being alive. So our impending death is a fact that we can kind of entertain, but we just can't place in our mind properly. And in fact, all humans aren't that great at really understanding external data or what it means to us, because deep inside, we do believe we are special. But what's amazing is this is true. We are very, very special and critically important. The issue is that we are only of critical importance to ourselves. It's only the process of aging that brings us experiences that make us wiser. Maybe your friends die, maybe some of your body parts fail, or you break things. And slowly this sense of wisdom creeps into you and arrives, hopefully, at least for some of us. And this wisdom begs us to start paying more attention to the fact that our bodies will not last forever. Your body has an expiry date, and if you aren't careful, it could end up in the trash at any moment. But besides the illusion of immortality, we fool ourselves in many other ways. The issue of feeling special is a constant truth in our mind, but a lie for understanding the rest of the world. We're going to talk about 3 of the lesser known but really important ways that we lie to ourselves in relation to the belief that we are special. And along with that, I'm going to provide some of my absolute favorite stories to help these ideas sink in. So without messing around, let's go straight into the first concept. Being the first isn't the best, so this concept might not be the best. Could be. We'll find out. But here's a story to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. If you've seen the movie Dunkirk, you'll appreciate it was a pretty impactful time on the history of Britain and the Second World War. And in the battle and the chaotic retreat from Dunkirk, Britain was facing a terrifying loss of like half its troops, but clawed some success from the jaws of defeat. 300,000 men were ferried off the beaches of France to England using basically any floating vessel that could be found. Fishermen, ferrymen, and any idiot with a boat crossed the channel to collect the British army, which is facing imminent destruction. The British Air Force flew out to protect the men during the voyage over to stop them from just being picked off from the skies, and Britain celebrated this as a success and praised their plucky achievement for the talented ingenuity of the British people who managed to save so many of its men from the foolish Nazis. General Gort, who led the evacuation, and General Alexander, who was one of the last British troops to leave Dunkirk, were not so delighted. They spoke to Churchill about the fact that Britain had just proven it was possible to ship over 300,000 men across the Channel whilst managing to avoid them all being killed in air attack. Britain may have been the first to do this, but there is now no reasons to believe that the Nazis couldn't do it either. And anything that we manage to do is copyable instantly. It's the same with the nuclear bomb. After that was developed, America was like, Russia won't be able to do this. And yet, within a few years, Russia had done it. And whenever we do something that other people have not done, we kind of get this feeling that we are better. Now, this is a very common flaw bound to our predisposition to believe that we are uniquely special. But instead of us being so brilliant in the first, the opposite is true. It only becomes easier after we have done it, because people know that it can be done and they learn from our mistakes as we do it. After Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, it became a regular event, and unsurprisingly, he is now no longer the fastest person to run a mile. Today, you see all the time, many entrepreneurs start a business thinking that if they can create a unique feature first, they'll have unlimited success after that. They'll forget that any competitor can copy a feature if this feature works that they've built. And having a good idea is all well and good, but believing that it will last is just a disaster waiting to happen. I mean, just look at what Facebook was when it first came out. It's a completely different app right now, but if it had stayed the same it was, you wouldn't even know what Facebook was anymore. It would just be forgotten along with MySpace. So, first is not the best, it's just a small window of opportunity at most. Now on to concept number 2. That is that other people's problems are also our problems. Stepping back a bit further into history, if you look at Britain during the Black Plague, this had gone over all of Europe, and it began in South England in around 1348. By 1349, it spread into Wales, Ireland, and northern England. It had ripped through the population mercilessly and brought the country to its knees. Now, the Scottish at this point had not experienced the plague, and they saw this as God punishing the English. They spotted a divine opportunity whilst England was on its knees, and they excitedly gathered an army to invade the fragile English. Sadly, plagues don't just exist to weaken your enemy, and as the Scottish started marching towards England, it turns out they were just as susceptible, and within days of crossing the border, their men were either dead, dying, or fleeing in terror. And by 1350, the plague had spread across all of Scotland. Now this is a reminder to be fearful of other people's problems. It's so easy to look at someone else's problem and think that it'll not apply to us. So frequently, we attribute other people's failures to their stupidity, and if they do succeed at something, we think it's their good luck. And then when we look at ourselves, we attribute our own failures as like unfortunate luck, but our success due to our innate genius. It's much better to assume the opposite. If you see someone struggling with something that you don't have much experience with, you should expect to perform the same or even much worse. Again, this is a problem that affects entrepreneurs and businesses, where they'll see a company struggling with a problem and they'll think just because they're special and better, they won't have these issues. And then they start their business and they get overwhelmed by all the same problems and make even less progress than the other business. So unless you have some real unique knowledge about how to complete something, you can assume that whatever you want to do is going to be just as difficult or even harder than what other people experience. Okay, and now onto the final concept, and that is to not be racist. This might seem a bit of an odd one to throw into the Growth Mindset podcast, but I did speak about prejudice. It does fit perfectly within this episode. For the past 100,000 years, humans have judged other races due to just our tribal nature and the need to think of ourselves as special. Yet the color of your skin is just due to like a small sliver of epidermis, about 1 millimeter thick. It's so thin that when you strip it off the rest of your flesh, it is translucent. And that's where all of your skin color is. Race is just a small sliver of epidermis. Nina Jablonski said that it's extraordinary how small a facet of our composition is given so much importance. People act as if skin color is a determinant of character when all it is a reaction to sunlight. Biologically, there isn't really a thing such as race. Yet look how many people have been enslaved or hated or lynched or deprived of fundamental rights throughout history because of the color of their skin. Now, racism is just simplistic thinking around the concept that we believe we are special. Our intuition is to judge others as less special than ourselves. And it's in our nature to fixate on any characteristics that we can find in others that might advance the feel that we are special or they are worse. So your intuition is basically a bit of a racist idiot without having some education or experience. The fact that racism has plagued our species for so long is a real leading indicator of our natural predisposition to see the flaws in others, whilst believing that there is just something more special inherently about ourselves. So the faster that you can overcome this, the quicker that you can see the world as it is, and you can see that your place in it, and you can understand that you are not special. The reason I'm talking about racism here is not so much about embracing equality in the world or preaching for us to all love each other, which is of course a super nice message, but to be honest, often feels like performative empathy rather than actionable insights. No, the reason I'm talking about racism is about being less dumb. It's easy to slip into racist prejudices, ideas like China can only copy things and it's only the West that has ideas. In reality, when you look at Chinese education, their youth absolutely smash America and Europe. They are years ahead of us at maths, and they actually still have a thing called work ethic, which we seem to be losing. Furthermore, China seems to be patenting about 3 times as many inventions as the USA does right now. So if you let the idea into your head that China can only copy inventions, that, in my understanding, is one of the niggling racist prejudices that can seep into your worldview and control how you think about the world and the decisions that you make that ultimately won't serve you well. So as I said, don't be racist. Right, I certainly hope you learned a little about spotting your blind spots and making less giant mistakes and dumb home goals. I'm currently putting a workshop together at the moment about creating more stability in your life, work, and potentially your business, as it feels like we are in an increasingly unstable world, let's say, especially this week. But this is exactly where long-term thinking and strategic investing comes in, whether that's investing in time, skills, or of course, money. And I think being a long-term thinker has especially more value when everyone else is getting caught up in short reactionary thinking and when the world just seems like a chaotic thing you can't plan for. Goal is to go into both strategy and tactics. As the great Sun Tzu said, strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory, but tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. So if you're interested in it, you can register early and get 50% off the workshop, because I'm asking anyone who is interested to fill in a super short form with just 2 questions that will help me make it the most useful event I can. So if that sounds intriguing, please do me a favor and click the link in the description to give me your opinions. As always, you can of course email me if you have any questions or book a call with me for free on Wednesday afternoons because I'm a social person who enjoys connecting. On that, if you know anyone who is constantly tripping over their own assumptions and idiocies, do of course shoot them this episode to make them less dumb. So do please remember to take it easy. The stock market might appear to be a flaming ball of nonsense right now, but spring is in the air, the sun still shines, and the birds are still in the trees, just as they have been for millions of years, and we will all be just fine. Thank you so much for listening.
Go you!
Your consistency to reach the end of an episode is legendary.
My hero!
If you have any ideas or feedback for the show, I'm always interested to hear from you.
You're the best!
Studies show we need time for information to sink in, so I'm going to give you a 5-second pause. Silence. To reflect on one idea from the show before you jump back into your busy life. Ready and go.